Welcome to the Multifamily Marketers Podcast. I'm Josh Grillo, your host, co-founder here at Resident 360. I'm also joined by my co-host, Caroline Mills. Caroline, how's it going out there in North Carolina?
It is good. We are in those weird phases right now. I think this weekend we were up at 70. And so I was like, got the San Diego weather here this weekend. And then yesterday, I think in the morning, our low was 28. So I was like, man, we're not out of the thick of it yet.
Back to normal.
I know. Well, question about your weekend. Last week we talked and it was your birthday last Thursday.
Yeah.
So
That was fantastic.
We talked about your most memorable birthday. So how was this birthday in comparison? Did you guys do anything fun on the weekend?
Oh, it was very chill. We just went out to dinner with the kids and everything in tow, and the kids had stuff all weekend. So it was a very involved kid weekend, I would say, which is now, my kids are, 12 and 14. So they're at that age now where they are just in everything. So it's constant, I'm kind of shuttling them around everywhere. And I remember when people used to tell me that when they had older kids, that's what they did. I was like, that's never going to be me. And now that's me.
Now it's you.
Hey, so real quick, we were just talking before we started recording about Google Business listings, and a couple of things just come across. Q&A. So Q&A, I heard, is going to be sunsetted. Is that the case?
Yeah, we are seeing that. So starting around end of last year, we saw where they were going to be sunsetting it. It took us a while to really notice on any of our profiles for our clients. The ones who, have had it existing for a long time, we're still seeing it there on some of them. If they've been kept up to date and they're still there, we're noticing that any new ones, so new devs, new transitions, things like that, you don't even have the option to add it anymore. And so we assume, in the coming months, we're going to start to see that rolled out and phased out across all of them. They're really leaning more on these AI overviews, AI summaries, things that are coming out versus these Q&As.
Yeah, and this Q&A is actually in the Google Business listing where it's people can ask questions and obviously your proper response back. A lot of times the Q&A section is overlooked always, so maybe that is why it's being phased out or sunset. And then another thing that I thought was interesting, because I know that we have recommended a lot in the past, is adding the word apartments in the actual name of your listing. So let's just say your apartment community is named Estancia, and that's your Google listing name. Adding the word apartments into that name a lot of times would help that listing rank better. But as of recently, what have we been seeing, Caroline?
Yeah, recently we have noticed, and this actually happened with a few clients of ours, that by them adding the name apartments and it not being in their full legal name and on their signage and on their property, that they were actually getting unverified. So this was causing properties to really just spin through that verification cycle with Google, which if you've ever had to done it, is not a great time. And we actually had a team that got to talk live with a Google agent, and they did tell them, they were like, hey, this is something we're cracking down on a lot more. And you've got to remove the word apartments because it doesn't match your signage, doesn't match the photos you're submitting, all that kind of stuff. So we haven't seen it take place if somebody has it existing, for a long time and it being taken away, but could be something that they're really cracking down on more.
All right. Let's switch gears to our topic for today. We are talking about BTR, build to rent communities. Yes. And more importantly, how to market build to rent communities, because I know you're not exactly treating them like apartments when you're marketing them. And Caroline, I know you are the perfect person to talk about BTR because you've spent a lot of time in it. You've marketed a lot of BTR communities, so I want to just pick your brain and ask you a whole bunch of questions that I came up with and help educate me more and everybody out there that's listening that may have build-to-rent communities that are getting ready to market them or are currently marketing them, some of the things they need to be paying attention to. So we're going to kick it off. Let me ask the first question. So why is BTR marketing different from a traditional apartment marketing? I mean, can I treat it the same as apartments? Because aren't they kind of like apartments?
Yeah, a little bit. Same and different on different aspects. I would say the main difference in what you're trying to sell, right? We'll go and dive into types of marketing to do, which is relatively the same. But you're kind of more, instead of selling like the density or that kind of maybe that type of aspect or the amenities. I've worked with BTR communities that have amenities and ones that have none. So, it can be wide range across the board of what your community is, but you're selling that space, that autonomy, that lifestyle. These are the kinds of people who want to live in a home without the upkeep of it. They want that kind of space. They want that freedom. They don't want those neighbors above them or below them. They don't want to be facing a pool. There's certain things that somebody's going to look for. So BTR really sits between apartment living and home ownership. They're getting the home aspect of it, but they're not owning it. They're still renting. But expectations can be a little bit higher, we find in BTRs than with apartments. It's a bigger commitment to move into a 4-bedroom house versus a 2-bedroom apartment. They're not going to have all the same amenities as far as the selling factor in their head of what they're getting out of it. So you're going to just see some different types of renters. It's more going to be about how it feels living there and what they're, getting out of the home versus what they're getting out of the amenities and the spaces around them necessarily.
So what's the biggest misconception marketers have about BTR communities?
I think that you're going to try and sell them the same way. So you can't just say apartments with garages. That's a completely different aspect. Somebody wanting an apartment with a garage is a very different renter than somebody who wants a 4-bedroom house and all the room with a garage. I think when you are going into the mindset of BTR, people pretty much expect garages now. Like if you're renting your own home, you're expecting a garage, you're expecting a driveway, you're expecting some yard space. Like those are the things that you're going to get regardless. And then I would say like underestimating how intentional the BTR search is. If somebody's looking to rent a home like this, maybe they're open to it. We just don't find that often. Somebody's like, oh, I don't know. Am I going to rent this 2-bedroom apartment in this, downtown, Raleigh? Or am I going to rent this home that's, a little further out that I get 4 bedrooms with my 2 kids at? Like somebody who's looking for that kind of thing is pretty intentional. Their mind is set on wanting to rent a home. It's just which one are they going to rent? I think the concept is also that it's still a really niche industry, and it's really not. I mean, we've seen on both the management side and the vendor side that these are really booming. We were getting them in North Carolina and Florida. Texas is a big, huge market for them. So these are really becoming a lot more common than they used to be.
So let's dive a little bit into the marketing side of it, more so branding and positioning. So how should BTR branding differ from apartment branding?
Yeah, I would say a little more lifestyle forward than amenity driven. Give them what it's going to be like to live in a day here. You're going to do kind of more, you're branding the lifestyle of the community versus the lifestyle of amenities and being around neighbors and like having all that kind of stuff. That's usually not something that they're looking for. And more just making sure you're really driving that community aspect home versus it being a complex. So like just like the loads of things you're going to get and being in walking distance to all these things. Now you're really focused on the serenity, the peacefulness, the yard space, the big room, all the storage. Those are the things that these people are looking for.
So what about messaging? What type of messaging mistakes do you see teams making when they're marketing BTR?
Yeah, I see some ones on like why, not clearly explaining why it's different. You go and you see a templated website that was probably copied from one of their apartment websites that they manage, and it just looks heavily the same. And I'm not getting the difference of why I would want to live at this home. Why should I choose this home over getting somewhere with the amenities? Is that something I'm still debating at that time? Or is it, okay, do I just rent through a landlord somewhere else? Like what am I getting out of having to go through this agency and still rent in this kind of community kind of thing? I would say using like very generic apartment style copy or terminology, those things like that. And then over focusing on maybe the price. I think, again, if somebody's intentionally going into this, they know what they're getting and that they're going to get more out of it. So I would say like focusing too heavy on what they're missing, like, oh, we may not have amenities, but we have this. Don't focus on that. Focus on what it's going to be like living there at the community and having all that space.
So that kind of leads me into what types of language, visuals, or positioning tend to resonate most with these BTR prospects. Kind of like what you were just talking. Is it more of a storytelling of that BTR community? Like what's really going to resonate with these BTR renters?
I think so. More lifestyle and using words like, I mean, obviously you can use home. We use that in apartments, but this is truly a house, a home that you're renting. So a home, neighborhood, space, privacy, storage, you've got natural light. You can show things about like the streetscapes, the interiors. You want to show more like everyday lifestyle in your shoot. I love the ones that include, lifestyle shots where they bring in, models or families or whoever to help do these lifestyle shoots. So somebody can see what it's like living there, even if they don't have all the amenities. If you do have amenities, that's great. You can still focus on that with your BTR. Some of them I see, like you might have a pool, but you're not going to have a fitness center. You're not going to have some of the other things. So really just emphasizing how the home is going to fit into their everyday life and like why they should choose renting a home with you versus going and buying one, making, ease of use, not having to care for the lawn, not having to worry about replacement of appliances, like making sure those things are focused on.
Let's dive a little bit into the website side of things, the website strategy. So what should a BTR website really prioritize that apartment websites often don't?
Definitely the floor plans and home layouts as a primary feature. I think when we first go to an apartment website, we see a lot of the great things. We see the skyscraper views. We see the amenities, the coffee shop that's set down on the ground floor. We see those kind of things. And you may just not have those kind of amenities with BTR. And someone's going to say, okay, I can rent a home at these 3 different communities, but they're going to want to see what it's like. What is the layouts? How much space are they getting with it? Definitely neighborhood, lifestyle content. What are they going to picture? How are my kids going to look playing outside in the cul-de-sac at the end? What is that going to feel like? And definitely more focus on like a calmer experience. There's not as many people around them. You don't have neighbors on top and below you. It's going to be more serene, like all of those kind of things that somebody wants in a home.
With the apartment website, with the BTR website. Now, this is the question I have. When we're talking homes versus apartments.
Yeah.
Now, very tricky when it comes to online homes versus apartments, right? Mm-hmm. In terms of search volume and search. Like, are you still, or when it comes to like your SEO and your content and all that, are you still just tried and true homes? Or are you trying to pull people that are actively maybe looking for apartments because there's a lot larger volume, people probably looking for apartments instead of a niche such as BTR? Are you trying to pull those apartment people over to the BTR side? Like, because I imagine it's like a fine line, right? Like
it is.
It's a very, you could have a BTR community in a real small area, small town, small neighborhood.
Yeah.
Where there's just not a lot of eyeballs, right?
Yeah.
But there is a lot of eyeballs for apartment style traffic, right?
Yes.
So, like, what do you do in those scenarios? Because I would imagine that's a pretty big deal.
I like that you gave that exact analogy. I would really say it's up to your market and can really differ between each community of where it's located. Having somewhere, like you said, if you're somewhere more densely populated, I'll take Wilmington, for example. You've got a fantastic mix of BTR and apartments in Wilmington. You can really get whatever you're looking for. You're still near all the action. You are going to get, it's just where do you want to live? You're still going to get all the same stuff out of it. You would want to differentiate yourself. That's a very saturated market. You're really going to want to go after the homes in that aspect because apartments are so saturated there. So you're doing a lot of competition with that. Now, I think there's very niche and like creative ways to do it on your website by still maybe SEO wise, organically putting the word apartment on your homepage in places that make sense. Like you could say, looking to upgrade your space from apartment living, look at our BTR homes or look at our homes with expansive yards, like using it like that.
I love it. Yeah, exactly. You're doing the call out, right? You're doing a call out almost from an SEO perspective, but then you're switching it up to the actually consider renting a home, right?
Yeah.
So it makes total sense.
Yeah. Versus maybe in a more niche market where somebody's further out. Like you said, I'm thinking like a Goldsboro, North Carolina. There's not a ton out there. It's a smaller space. People may not know that even renting homes out there is necessarily an opportunity. They're just looking to rent somewhere. And so you're kind of near a Air Force base, you're near some renting sites. Okay, now I'm going to actually bid on the word apartments and maybe include it a little bit more because people don't know I'm here. They don't know I exist. They don't know they can get all these things. And there's just not eyes. Like you said, you can use Keyword Planner and Google Ads to kind of tell you how many searches in the past year there are. Homes are less still at this time in kind of all markets across the board, but significantly less in certain markets than others. So really lean on your provider, your digital marketing provider, to help give that advice for you so they can do that research for you per market.
Yeah, that leads me to my next question. What marketing channels tend to work best for BTR communities?
Yeah, you are definitely going to now with AI overviews and searches. This is something we're constantly relying on, but making sure that landing page or that home page is really built out using those call to actions like that, where you're including a tagline like the apartments one we gave. Organic and local SEO is going to be great for you. You absolutely still use your Google ads like that, doesn't need to change. There are different services on both apartments.com and with Zillow. Zillow was primarily used for homes and is still used for homes for the most part that people know of. They do have a rental network that you can go through too. And then apartments.com, they have homes.com, but they also have a feature on apartments.com. So this is kind of that between category that I think is a good one. You can actually turn on filters that make you show up as a home, but when people are searching for rental apartments in an area, and it gives you a little home icon over your little pin, and people know that's what they're getting out of it. But you can definitely still use the same sources that you're used to. You just have to be creative and strategic with them. Don't go on apartments.com acting as apartments when you're a BTR community, or you're doing Google ads. Use some of those catchy headlines to grab people's attention if they include the word apartments, but don't be spending all your money on apartment keywords. I would say this is something we actually talked about with the community is regardless of where you're marketing, make sure your on-site team knows how to sell and change that, change those people's minds or shift them one way or another. You can bid on the word apartments and have the word apartments on your website. If I call the leasing office and say, hey, I'm looking to rent in the area, do you guys have apartments? I saw homes on your website, but do you rent apartments? You can say, no, but let me tell you actually why you'll really love renting a home more. Like you got to have a good sales team that knows how to do that. If they just say, no, we don't have apartments here. Okay, cool. Bye. And that's all you get out of it.
Yeah. That makes sense. The build to rent term, is it something that people, again, it's all come out in the last few years, right? Yeah. But is it something people are even aware of that's out there, right? You're out there looking for a place to live. Are people aware of it? Has the category done enough to brand itself?
My vote right now at this time is going to be no. Like I would say you go to somebody in the grocery store and you say, do you know what a build to rent community is? People aren't going to know BTR. They're not going to know build to rent. If they're even an average renter isn't going to know to look up that term by any means. They're likely going to search for homes to rent or communities to rent or, where to rent near this school or this location or this area. So again, being strategic on how you phrase that and word that, because I don't think so. I really don't think people are going to be like, communities that are like houses and neighborhoods, but where I rent. Like, you just don't, people don't know how to phrase that.
Yeah. Okay. So you really got to be, as a marketer, you got to walk that tightrope of the word apartments and homes. It's almost like you said earlier, right? Looking for a great apartment, have you considered a home for rent?
Mm-hmm.
That
exactly.
Like kind of like I don't want to call it a switch pitch, right? They're both homes to live in, but that's how you're kind of positioning it, right? And obviously you're positioning it that way, maybe in some of the copy on your website, but I would assume also any advertising that you're doing from paid ads, maybe with paid ads, you're even running competitive searches, right, on other competitors, apartment community competitors in the area. You're parking ads on those community names that are, if you're looking for these apartments, consider a home for rent community that's right in the same area, right?
Yeah.
I guess that's how you have to look at some of these things to really drive the traffic, get the eyeballs, and get your BTR community known, right?
Exactly.
All right, moving right along. I don't know if we covered this one or not, but I'm going to ask it. Are there channels that are commonly overused or misunderstood in BTR marketing?
I would say one of the big ones is really just like not aligning your channels together, or again, not explaining it the right way, regardless of if you're running Google ads, you're paying per click, right? So just make sure those are very intentional. You can't have the same headlines that you do in apartments. Like people are just going to understand 1 to 3 beds for rent. It's typically an apartment. So you just have to be more creative with that headline, with those storytellings. Make sure if you're on those ILSs that you are toggling on those features that are going to show that you are a home versus an apartment. The last thing you want is, that's great if your leasing team can flip people often and have a fantastic ratio of being able to do it. But you don't want non-qualified people. So you don't want people who are looking for, apartments for $1,500 and your homes are $3,000 and you're fielding all these calls because you're coming up with, the local apartments down the street that you don't match with. So I would say just making sure that you've got really auditing those. We talk about that all the time, but auditing those sites and listing to really make sure you're telling the story correctly of the community.
Does it make sense to create, have a really good language set that's created ahead of time, getting a clever creative writer that can create this language set of all these different, taglines, right? I can see, having like really a brand persona, identity, all that, in the branding process where you have, all these different taglines that are, that have apartments to homes, right? And then also little copy things. What is built to rent, right? Well, it's like an apartment, but it's not, right? You have this whole copy set that's done ahead of time that is automatically dispersed all throughout your website, through all your marketing. And more importantly, your on-site team has as well. So they're totally aware of what's happening and they know, specifically how to coach someone in when they're calling from a first time from an ad or something like that. Saying, oh, do you got apartments for rent? Well, no, we don't. Well, yes, we do. But the reality is they're really homes for rent, and this is what this is all about. So, okay.
Absolutely.
Moving right along, let's talk about lease up. So how should marketers set expectations around BTR lease up timelines? So we're talking lease ups, lease up timelines, and BTR.
These ones can be pretty interesting and definitely a different perspective if you're not used to it. Like even if you have staggered times on apartments, you always have to finish one building at one time, right? Like you can't have residents moving into a half-finished building. BTR is a little bit different because they're building, each individual home by home by home. So typically it's done in sections, but it's still only a few at a time. So you may be thinking, okay, well, I have 50 homes in this community. I'm releasing, 5 a week, for how many X months. It is going to take a little bit longer to finish that community because, they're moving house by house by house. It's not the same where they can just load up a bunch of fridges on an elevator and take them down the hall and get them in, all that kind of thing. So I would say like how the home lease inventory is delivered, that it's not going to be all at once. It can definitely be a slower lease up time. Like we talked about earlier, these renters can be a little bit more intentional. I would say averagely these renters are looking to rent somewhere a little more long term. They just maybe don't want the upkeep of a house or things like that. We don't often see that a bunch of renters want to move into the space of a 4-bedroom house with all of that effort that it's going to take and then move out 12 months later or 10 months later. So we definitely see these more as kind of long-term renters and leasers. So they're likely going to be more intentional as well. They might be a little bit more picky. They might be asking for very specific things in it. But the long-term retention is often stronger with these types of renters.
Yeah, I was going to say, is there, when you have a BTR community and you actually are full, do you really have real occupancy issues there, or is it?
No, it's my favorite.
Is it you get a BTR renter in and their lifetime value is maybe they're there for 3 to 5 years. Yeah. Is that kind of the case?
We have seen that. We had a few communities where if they can stay occupied, once they stabilize, if you only have, 30 to 50 units and you only have 2 or 3 coming available, every few months because they're staggered and people just don't move out of them as often, it's a lot easier to stay above 90% when you only have, 2 units to rent at a time, 2 homes to rent at a time. So it can definitely be easier and more sustainable. They typically can be people looking to grow their families or people who have families or people who have sold their houses and want to downsize and don't want the upkeep. So they want to be there a while. They want to make this, sustainable for them and their family or whoever's moving in with them. So they definitely don't want to just be packing up moving all the time. So it's a lot easier to maintain that retention. If you can get there off your lease up timeline, you still got to be really intentional about it.
So it sounds like you really want to front load your budget as much as you can on lease up and literally go at it full, as much as you possibly can, get that property stabilized, because after that, if it's just 1 or 2 move outs, pretty easy to fill that, right? Versus, the whole community.
Exactly.
So what pre-leasing strategies work best, would you say, for BTR?
Like you said, definitely front loading. That was a good way to say it. So definitely your early interest, your wait list, getting those, whether it's renderings and floor plans out there as quickly as possible. People understand the concept of like a home, right? Like they get like, oh, it's going to be an individual building that looks like this where I live. It's a little different than apartments where you just maybe see an outside rendering and you're like, okay, well, what am I facing? What all's going to be here? How many floors is it? You know, all these other things that you take into consideration. So definitely like floor plan focused. You definitely want to make sure that you are transparent, you know, about your timelines and availability. Make sure if you've got that staggered schedule that that's correct on your website and in your system. Some of these can be moving from homes we often see where they're selling their home and moving into this kind of space. So when people sell their home, they got to go somewhere. So like you just want to be making sure you're really intentional on your timelines of when these things will become available. And then really just reiterating that neighborhood first messaging, making sure they know what it's going to be like to live there from early on, show them what they're getting out of it early on, even if the home's not finished.
Is with pre-leasing a community, is it kind of like a lease up an apartment community as well? You're starting 12 months out, 6 months out, like when that community can be occupied at all? Like what is it the same type of pre-lease timeline?
Very similar. In fact, you see some that push even the apartment ones to 4 to 6 months ahead of time. I think with homes, you have a little bit more time because somebody's house can be on the market. Either they are planning, their market based on their seasonality of where they're at when they want to sell their home, or they just think about it a lot longer. When you get to renting an apartment, you just got to give your 60-day notice. So you might think about it for 2 weeks if you want to move or not. Whereas moving out of your home, that's a big deal. Like you're going to put a lot of months of effort and time into this. And before you even may consider it, you might start looking around for these things. So if you can say, oh, there's this rental home community down the street that it'll have a pool, but it's going to be nice and spacious. We're going to get yards. It looks like they'll be selling or they're going to start renting in, June of next year. Okay, let's put our house on the market in May and really try and time this out right. All that kind of stuff.
Makes sense. All right. So how does the on-site tour and follow-up experience differ for BTR compared to regular apartments?
Yes. So these can definitely, it's more like showing a house. If your agents haven't been to an open home or seen a realtor show a house, I would definitely recommend that kind of training on it. Apartment tours, you kind of always have your flow and your cadence. You start in the office, you go through the amenities, you go through an apartment. People kind of know what to expect, in there. And again, they might be looking at a lot of different types of places. With a home, they're going to be pretty intentional about it. So really taking your time, you may not have amenities. All you may have to show them is the model home and that's it. So you don't want it to seem as rushed or okay, here's the home, here's the kitchen, here's the bathroom, and you just go through it really quickly. Think about it as if you are the realtor selling the home, you're opening the cabinets and you say, look how much storage you have in here. Imagine you're cooking for your family and how much space you've got. Really be intentional in the spaces that you're in so that their time still feels valued and the amount of effort that you're going into to show them the home. So they won't even think about all the amenities they're missing. They're thinking about all the great things that they're getting in their home.
All right, let's move into some mistakes. All right.
Mm-hmm.
What are the most common mistakes that BTR marketing that you see? So what are most common BTR marketing mistakes?
I would say the two that come to my top of my mind are under investing in the content and brand. Just thinking oh, it's homes and there's no brand to it. There's no nothing about it that's drawing anybody in. And then the second one would be that marketing. So misaligning expectations between ops and marketing, whether that's what we're advertising on, how we're advertising, what we're calling ourselves, making sure the on-site teams know what to do with it, making sure they can change that sale if it is an apartment, and just making sure that everybody's aligned on the same thing we're putting out there.
What's one thing marketing teams should stop doing when it comes to BTR?
Ooh, okay. I would say even if you have a apartment in the same market, don't treat your lease up playbook the same way. Don't treat your renter playbook the same way. Definitely take a different look at this. You may have 17 other apartment communities in the same market, but you are really going to want to treat this one differently, have different kinds of expectations going into it, and then really just putting that effort in and making sure that you're not just copying and pasting what you're doing for another apartment community.
No, that's good advice. All right, last one, and then we'll wrap this up. What advice would you give to a team launching their first BTR community?
Ooh, okay. I'm going to say we'll do tell the story before you sell the home. So tell the story of what it's going to be like living there. before selling the home. People know they're getting a home out of it, but you've got to tell the story of really what it's going to be like to live there. I would say even more so if you don't have the amenities, really tell the story, make sure the renter knows what it's going to be like to live in this community before you even talk about floor plans and selling them on which one's their best one.
So you're saying this story, you got to get it all down and get it all written down, and that becomes your real marketing, all your marketing.
Yeah.
Of that?
Exactly. Getting it out there early, making sure you're selling that idea. If you sell them on the idea to get them there, then your leasing team should, be able to close on them once they get in.
Yeah, I can see it being very confusing, right? If you've worked and you've had a lot of, multifamily communities, apartment communities, and all of a sudden you have a BTR one now.
Yeah.
and trying to, switch over to that mindset and that speak, that vocabulary that, okay, these are homes, they're not apartments, and getting trained, getting your brain trained around that. Could probably be kind of confusing there at first. So
yeah.
All right. All great stuff, Caroline. Thank you so much. We will wrap this episode up. We will be back next week with another topic. Hope you guys enjoyed it today. And Caroline, enjoy your 28-degree weather out there. And I will be seeing you next week on another episode of the Multifamily Marketers Podcast. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.